Добрый день, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to a very important discussion today, which is about university rankings and ratings, and it's about credit and transfer schemes. And the theme of this discussion is prompted by numerous discussions we have had with our partners, with the Ministry of Higher and Secondary Specialized Education, with all universities in Uzbekistan, because in view of large-scale national higher education reforms, all universities would like to align these standards and their performance to international standards, and they want to know more about university rankings and about credit transfer schemes. So today, with our partner in the UK, Advance HE, we prepared this webinar to share UK experience around university rankings and league tables, and to share some case studies around credit transfer systems and approaches and what it means for university performance. So, as I said, we run this series of webinars in collaboration with the Ministry of Higher and Secondary Specialized Education, with Higher Education Council in Uzbekistan, with Quality Assurance Agency in Uzbekistan, with El Yurtumide Foundation, and all universities in Uzbekistan. So, and I'm delighted to give a floor to the Deputy Minister of Higher and Secondary Specialized Education, Uzakboy Begimkulov. He's on the phone, but I'm sure he will say a few words to welcome all of us and to outline priorities for higher education in Uzbekistan. Over to you, Uzakboy Shimkulovich.
Assalamu alaikum, hurmatli Ellison Jones xonim, janob doktor Andrew Turner, Muhtam Pardayevich, hurmatli Jamila Gulyamova, Oliy o'rta maxsus ta'lim vazirligi nomidan avvalambor hammalaringizni mana shunday bir yaxshi bir tadbirni tashkillashtirganingiz uchun minnatdorchilik bildirmoqchiman. Hurmatli Ellison Jones xonim, Oliy o'rta maxsus ta'lim vazirligi sizning Buyuk Britaniyani Advanced HE agentlik bilan hamkorlikdagi oliy ta'lim sohasidagi ko'p yillik samarali faoliyatingizni qadrlaydi. Sizning ko'p yillik amaliy tajribangiz respublikamizda oliy ta'lim tizimi faoliyatini takomillashtirishda muhim ahamiyatga ega deb hisoblaymiz. Janob doktor Andrew Turner, siz boshchilingizdagi Coventry University miqyosida bajarilgan loyihalar natijasida talabalarning tajribasini oshirishda muhim natijalarga erishganligini hamda an'anaviy virtual ta'lim muhitini o'rnini bosuvchi Aula innovatsion yangi o'quv tajribasi platformasi amalga oshirilganligi alohida e'tiborga sazovor. Bugungi universitetlar reytingi va kredit transfer tizimi mavzusidagi video seminarda muhokama qilinishi ko'zda tutilgan masalalar hamda respublika oliy ta'lim tizimida amalga oshirilayotgan islohotlarda dolzarb ahamiyat kasb etadi. Bugungi kunda respublikamizning 46 ta oliy ta'lim muassasasida bevosita kredit modul tizimi joriy etilgan bo'lib, yangi o'quv yilidan barcha davlat oliy ta'lim muassasalarini mana shunday yangi kredit modul tizimiga o'tkazish rejalashtirilgan. Bir yil davomida biz zarur tajribalarni, ilg'or xorijiy tajribalarni o'rgangan holda shu faoliyatimizni, tizimni, kredit modul tizimini samarali joriy etish bo'yicha faoliyatni yo'lga qo'yganmiz. Maqsadlarimiz yaqin kelajakda, ya'ni keyingi o'quv yilidan boshlab barcha oliy ta'lim muassasalarini mana shu kredit modul tizimiga o'qish jarayonini, o'quv jarayonini tashkil etish bilan bog'liq faoliyatni tashkil qilmoqchimiz. Shuning uchun ham bizga ilg'or xorijiy tajribani o'rganish juda muhim hisoblanadi. Ayniqsa bizni o'qituvchilarni mana shu kredit modul tizimida faoliyat olib borish bo'yicha malakasini oshirish, bevosita o'quv me'yoriy hujjatlarimizning kredit modul tizimi talablariga uyg'unlashtirish bilan bog'liq qator hali muhokamali masalalarimiz oldinda turibdi. Shu bilan birga O'zbekiston oliy ta'lim muassasalarini xalqaro tanilishi va e'tirof etilishi bo'yicha ham tizimli ishlar boshlangan. Bundan 3 yil oldin Quest kompaniyasi, TC kompaniyalari bilan, Elsevier kompaniyalari bilan birgalikda biz oliy ta'lim muassasalarimizni xalqaro miqyosda e'tirof etilishi va tanilishi borasida yo'l xaritalari bilan birgalikda Ilm-fan 2020 dasturini ham amalga oshirib kelmoqdamiz va istiqbolda shu yo'nalishdagi ishlarimizni rivojlantirish bo'yicha ushbu yuqoridagi kompaniyalar bilan hamkorlikni davom ettirish niyatidamiz. Bevosita mana shu amalga oshirilgan ishlarning dastlabki natijalari hammaga ma'lum. Mana Questning Sharqiy Yevropa va Markaziy Osiyo davlatlari universitetlari reytingida O'zbekistonni bir yo'la 4 ta universiteti birinchi bor, ikki marotaba Toshkent irrigatsiya va qishloq xo'jaligini mexanizatsiyalashtirish muhandislari instituti ikkinchi marotaba mana shunday reytingda o'zini munosib o'rniga ega bo'ldi. O'ylaymanki, bizni muhtaram prezidentimiz tomonidan tasdiqlangan oliy ta'lim tizimini 2030-yilgacha rivojlantirish konsepsiyasida 10 ta oliy ta'lim muassasamizni dunyoning kuchli 1000 talik universitet ro'yxatiga kiritdi. Shundan 2 ta universitetimizni bevosita kuchli 500 talik universitetlar ro'yxatiga kiritish bo'yicha amalga oshirilayotgan ishlarimizda xalqaro xorijiy hamkorlarimizni bevosita ularni tegishli tajribalarini o'rganish asosida shu faoliyatni davom ettiryapmiz, yo'lga qo'yganmiz. Mana shu oliy ta'lim muassasalarida o'quv jarayoniga kredit to'plash va ko'chirishning Yevropa tizimi asosida ta'limning kredit model tizimini joriy etish tartiblarini ishlab chiqib, belgilab, bugungi kunda shu yo'nalishlarda harakat qilib boryapmiz. O'ylaymanki, bugungi webinar ham respublika oliy ta'lim muassasalari reytinglari va kredit tizimini takomillashtirishda o'z samarasini berishiga ishonch bildiramiz. Respublikamizda Britaniya kengashi tomonidan 2 tomonlama sheriklik asosida oliy ta'lim tizimini rivojlantirish yo'nalishidagi hamkorlikda amalga oshirilayotgan ishlarni qo'llab-quvvatlaymiz. Mazkur yo'nalishda hamkorlik uchun sizlarga minnatdorchilik bildiramiz. E'tiborlaringiz uchun rahmat.
Rahmat, thank you very much, Uzbekistan Imkovich, for this very important introduction to our discussion. And of course, thanks a lot for continuing partnership and collaboration on a number of projects that we run in higher education in Uzbekistan in collaboration with the UK. Another important partner on our higher education program is Higher Education Council of Uzbekistan, and we have got the chair of the council, Oktam Pardavich Murzakov, with us today, and we ask him to outline key priorities on behalf of all the rectorship in Uzbekistan. Over to you, Oktam Pardavich.
Assalomu alaykum, hurmatli tadbir ishtirokchilari, hurmatli hamkasblar, xonimlar va janoblar, albatta hurmatli ekspertlarimiz Ellison Jones xonimlariga va doktor Andrew Turnerlarga ham kattadan alangali salom aytaman. Hurmatli do'stlar, bugungi kunda O'zbekiston Respublikasida oliy ta'limni tizimli isloh qilishning ustuvor yo'nalishlarini belgilash va oliy ta'limni modernizatsiya qilish, professor o'qituvchilar salohiyatini oshirish va o'qitishning zamonaviy texnologiyalarini joriy etish bo'yicha aynan Britaniya kengashining O'zbekistondagi vakolatxonasi bilan keng ko'lamli hamkorlik ishlari olib borilmoqda desam mubolag'a bo'lmaydi. Britaniya kengashining O'zbekistondagi vakolatxonasi ko'magida ta'limni rivojlantirish bo'yicha birgalikda o'tkazilgan ko'plab vebinarlar va unda ishtirok etayotgan xorijiy ekspertlarning fikr mulohazalarni va tajribalarini biz juda yuqori baholaymiz va qadrlaymiz. Aynan bugungi vebinarning ham mavzusi universitetlarning reytinglari va kredit transfer tizimi deb nomlanishi bejiz emas. Bugungi kunda O'zbekiston oliy ta'lim muassasalarining xalqaro reyting ko'rsatkichlari va natijalari yaxshilanib borayotganini yaqqol ko'zga tashlanmoqda. Men bu to'g'risida to'xtab yurmayman, chunki bu to'g'risida hurmatli vazirimiz o'rinbosari professor Begimqulov juda batafsil ma'lumot berdilar. O'zbekiston oliy ta'lim muassasalarining xalqaro miqyosda tanilishi va tan olishida respublikada xorijiy ekspertlar va tashkilotlar ishtirokida tashkil etilayotgan xalqaro tadbirlarning o'rni juda muhim ahamiyatga ega. Xorijiy universitetlarga talabalarning qabul qilinishiga reyting jadvallari va kredit transferi alohida ahamiyat kasb etadi. Ushbu vebinarda Buyuk Britaniya universitetlari reytinglari va kredit transfer tizimi bilan tanishish hamda ular haqida batafsil ma'lumot olish, ta'lim sifati samaradorligini ta'minlash bo'yicha fikr va tajriba almashishga katta imkoniyat yaratiladi deb umid qilaman. Bunday yondashuvlar talabalarni xorijiy universitetlarga mobillik darajasini oshirish, ularni kelgusi rejalarini amalga oshirishda va pirovard natijada oliy ta'lim muassasalarini nufuzini yanada oshirishga xizmat qiladi. Shu bilan birgalikda Britaniya Kengashining O'zbekistonda olib borayotgan oliy ta'lim dasturi mamlakatimizda amalga oshirayotgan ta'lim islohotlariga to'liq mos qilib, institutsional va milliy darajadagi aloqalarni kuchaytiradi degan fikrdaman. Aminmanki, bunday platformalarda tashkil etilayotgan muloqotlar va xalqaro tajriba almashuvlar oliy ta'lim tizimida universitetlar reytinglarini va kredit transfer tizimi, talabalarning zaruriy ko'nikmalarini yanada rivojlantirish va respublikamiz oliy ta'lim tizimini dunyo oliy ta'lim tizimiga integrallashuvi jadallashtirishga ijobiy ta'sir ko'rsatadi deb umid qilaman. O'z navbatida yana bir marta bugungi xalqaro ekspertlarimiz qiziqarli ma'ruzalarni kutib qolamiz. So'zim yakunida bugungi tadbir tashkilotchisi bo'lmish Britaniya Kengashiga o'zim nomimdan, qolaversa ko'p sonli oliy ta'lim muassasalari jamoalari nomidan chuqur minnatdorchilik bildiraman. E'tiborlaringiz uchun katta rahmat.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pardayevich, for highlighting the importance and the reasons for why this discussion today is so important for reforms in Uzbekistan. So today we have got more than 300 participants representing rectors, pro-rectors, national, international project teams working on education reform. We have ministries and agencies, and I see Uzbek Embassy in London are joining us today for this discussion, just to strengthen all the links between higher education agencies, organizations in the UK and Uzbekistan. So we have got a wider membership of El Yurtumide Foundation, researchers, academic leaders who are willing to study overseas. So it's a big audience, and the theme of this discussion is so important. You know, a few housekeeping notes. I encourage all of you to leave all your comments and questions for our presenters today in the chat box. And I ask you, when you speak, to put your cell phones on silent mode, so we don't interrupt any discussions today. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our wonderful speakers today. And it's Alison Jones, CEO of Advance HE, who you know very well. And we hope, Alison, very soon you will be able to come to Uzbekistan and to meet all our partners and all your friends face to face. And also we have got Dr. Andrew Turner, who is Associate Pro Vice Chancellor in charge of teaching and learning at Coventry University, who has got a wealth of experience and expertise. So both of our guests will share all the learning from the UK, and will share some useful examples of good practice and case studies with us today. But again, please leave your questions in the chat box and prepare your questions for the question and answer session after the presentation. So over to you, Alison and Andrew.
Spasiba, Jamila. Salam alaikum, Dobradi. My thanks to Minister Uzbekistan, dear friend. I hope to see you soon, and also to Chair of the Higher Education Commission, Mozakov, because I look forward to meeting you too, face to face, before too long, I hope. Thank you, Jamilia, also for organising these webinars. The numbers attending have been beyond our wildest dreams, so I do hope they're proving useful for people. It's our great pleasure to be joining you again today, and I'd just like to say a few words of introduction. I can hear how important credit transfer systems are to you, and we will share, particularly Andrew, our experience of these. I would just like to say, when I joined higher education 30 years ago, we were talking about credit transfer systems internally in the UK. Nothing very much really has happened internally. Where they have proved incredibly important is for international credit recognition. And we feel that's probably of more interest to yourselves, and Andrew will be talking to that. And today's presentation is very much a presentation of two parts: credit transfer and university rankings, and the impact that has on institutions in terms of how they shape their strategy. And Andrew has a fantastic case study from Coventry University about how they use the rankings to drive the performance and management, particularly of teaching and learning, but other aspects of university business. A couple of words about Coventry University. Coventry University can trace its roots back to 1843. It currently has 35,000 students, and to be fair to say, they do pretty well in university rankings. I'll let Andrew share that with you later on. I know when I was looking to go to university, more years ago than I care to admit, Coventry was one of the, what we called then, modern universities. That was certainly on my list. And they have a long-standing reputation for high quality innovation in all that they do, including their leadership and management. So I was really delighted when Andrew said he was able to come to speak to these two very important topics today. Andrew himself has been at Coventry for 25 years and is really one of the leading lights in the subjects that he will be talking to you about. He heads up education development services, is very concerned with all aspects of the student experience. And I think he's the person that actually leads on the responses to university rankings, particularly the importance of data. So I won't steal his thunder. I would just like to say thank you for having us again today. And Andrew, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alison, and thank you for those introductions and greetings from Coventry. It's just clouded over. I was going to say it's a lovely sunny afternoon, but I think it's just about to rain again, which is typical for the UK. So welcome everybody. Let me just share my screen with you. And you should see some slides. Please tell me if you can't. Okay, so as Alison has said, this is really a seminar in two halves. The first half really is around university rankings, league tables, and then we'll move on to credit transfer systems. And what I'd like to share with you really is some of the experiences we've had at Coventry and some of the strategies we've had at Coventry. Just a little bit about Coventry to start off with. Coventry, as Alison's introduced, can trace its roots back a long time. As a university, we formed in 1992 out of the old Lanchester Coventry Polytechnic. Coventry, if you don't know, is in the Midlands of England, central England. Coventry University itself is a group, and we have a number of campuses and education subsidiaries. So just a little bit about us really. Coventry University itself in Coventry has 4 faculties: business and law, engineering, environment and computing, arts and humanities, and health and life sciences. We have an education subsidiary called CU Group, which has campuses, another campus in Coventry, and then London and Scarborough. And this is very much a subsidiary that offers education to as a widening participation groups, and certainly the campus in Scarborough and also the one in Dagenham in London. It was aimed at spots in the UK where the numbers of students going into higher education was very low. So it was about widening access to university education in those areas. We also have another subsidiary, Coventry University London, which is in the heart of the City of London, which attracts a lot of international students and focuses on areas of business. And then earlier this year, we opened our campus in Wrocław in Poland as part of our strategy with the UK obviously leaving the European Union. We're growing rapidly. We now have a total actually across our subsidiaries and Coventry University itself of around 39,000 students in the UK. We're a global university. We have around 18,000 students at our overseas collaborative partners in around 20 countries. So we're represented in Africa, in the Middle East, also Central Asia, and then Southeast Asia. We have also a partnership with FutureLearn, which is a platform with massive online open courses, and we have around 166,000 students enrolled on MOOCs on our FutureLearn platform. Also, we have a number of overseas hubs in Singapore, Dubai, and just recently opened in Rwanda as well. So just a little bit about the seminar. I'll firstly concentrate on rankings and ratings of UK higher education, and then focus on a case study of how Coventry University, our journey really, using data to inform enhancements in teaching and learning, and that use of data to drive and enhance performance. I'll then move on to credit transfer, an introduction to some of the history and the background in the UK, and talk about the mechanisms, but really I want to focus on how we use that with examples from Coventry, and then we'll move to our question and answer session. Okay, so some little bit of context about the UK context, which I'm sure you're familiar with, but it's important in kind of framing our response and how Coventry has gone about its journey. As you know, we have a really competitive higher education environment in the UK. Back in 2018-19, with over 160 UK higher education institutions with around 2.38 million students. Of that, around 1.88 million are full-time. We have around 500,000 part-time. Of that total, about 1.9 million are from the UK. Probably a decreasing number now, we've left the EU, but around 0.14 million from the EU. And then we have those students coming from non-EU countries. So a sizable proportion of students from EU countries. It's a very regulated environment, and highly regulated environment with lots of statutory data collected by UK government agencies. And this data is then used quite openly now for league tables and rankings in the UK. And those are really important in informing student choice, parent choice for students choosing their university in the UK. They're also really important for how institutions in the UK are viewed externally. We have the Office for Students in the UK, which is the independent regulator of higher education in England. And all universities now, to be able to offer degrees and receive you know, the funding, have 24 conditions of registration. Part of the data that OFS collect and administer, we have the National Student Survey, which I'm not sure I'm not sure how familiar you are with that, but the NSS, as it's referred to, is a mandatory survey of all final year undergraduate students in universities in the UK to measure levels of satisfaction. And that covers aspects of teaching, of assessment, of course organisation, and overall satisfaction with the student experience that students have. And that's a mandatory survey that students and very much administered through the OFS. We also have the OFS really carefully monitoring data and collecting data on student degree outcomes. So things like the proportion of a student graduating with a good honours, so a first class or an upper second class degree, the achievements of students, employment outcomes, so collecting data on salaries after graduation, on the proportion of students that achieve employment 6 months after graduation, and then longer term employment prospects now. So graduate salaries are now featuring large in the data that's collected. They're also responsible for the TEF, introduced in 2017, the Teaching Excellence Framework. And I'll just talk a little bit about the TEF in a moment. But this data is publicly available, it's used in league tables, it's used in rankings in the UK. The TEF, which you may have heard of, the Teaching Excellence Framework, it's a condition of registration in the UK to submit to the TEF. It's based on a number of metrics. One of those metrics is the performance in the National Student Survey, so student satisfaction. That forms around 50% of the rating in the TEF, or the Teaching Excellence Framework. There's also data on student outcomes, employability, and written evidence from the university. So when I put together our written evidence for Coventry back in 2017, you know, it was a submission explaining our journey, explaining our ethos on the student experience, and also explaining how we've enhanced the student experience as well. Universities are rated gold, silver, or bronze. Gold for delivering consistently outstanding teaching, learning, and outcomes for students, the highest quality rating found in the UK. We have silver, which is delivering high quality teaching, learning, and outcomes for its students, consistently exceeds rigorous national quality requirements for UK higher education, and then bronze for delivering teaching, learning, outcomes for students that meet rigorous national quality requirements for UK higher education. And these are awarded, universities can move up or down. We were awarded gold when we submitted, when the TEF first opened in 2017. We did very well in it. And I think part of how we achieved well in the TEF was because our journey has been around the intelligent use of data to inform our strategies. And much of the data that was used in the TEF in terms of student outcomes, student satisfaction, we've been working with for 5 years previous to that, in informing our strategy, in driving our enhancements. So in the TEF, data is benchmarked. You get students coming in, and then there's expectations of student performance, and we exceeded those benchmark performances. But I'd say a lot of the reason why we did those achievements was because of working with the data and informing our strategy with data in that use of data. So the data, I want to touch on some of the UK-based league tables to show you how the data is used. And you'll see the same data collected by the OFS, collected by the government. That same data is then used in many of the league tables. So typically we have aspects of performance of courses or programs. So student satisfaction measured by the National Student Survey, student outcomes, number of students with a good honours degree, the number of students successfully completing their course of study. So the numbers enrolling at the beginning and then how many of them make it to the end. And that's really important in terms of league tables. Student entry qualifications are seen as a measure of quality. So the level of students coming in, qualifications they bring into the university are seen as a measure of quality as well. Employment statistics, typically how many students graduate and achieve a graduate level job that requires graduate level capabilities. And then the student satisfaction. Also informing some of the league tables are research performance. And you're probably aware in the UK, we have the Research Excellence Framework. We've just completed the round of submission for the 2021 return for the Research Excellence Framework. The one previously was in 2014, so they happen less frequently. This is a system for assessing the quality of research in UK higher education institutions. So some of the league tables will use this data to inform the league table position. Other aspects such as finance, the spend we make per student, so how much we spend on students in teaching and learning, staff-student ratios. And performance in these matters, and it matters. Firstly, it impacts on UK and international recruitment. International matters because some of these league tables are used internationally and used by governments to inform whether students studying in the UK are sponsored by governments. So if you fall below a certain level in these league tables, you know that overseas governments won't sponsor students to come and study at your university. So they're used in that way. It impacts on UK and international recruitment. It's really important for partnership development, and Coventrys has many overseas partners. It's really important in informing the quality of the partners that you can work with, and being able to work with quality partners overseas. So all those are really important. So performance matters with that. So these are three, and I put this up really to compare the methodology of three of the key league tables in the UK. So these three league tables are the Times and Sunday Times University Guide, the Complete University Guide, and the Guardian University Guide. And what I've put there are the metrics to use to inform those. And what you'll see is that the weighting of those metrics varies. They all use roughly the same metrics, but they vary in the weighting of those. And so it's when you're working strategically, it's important to know really how the decisions you take and the strategies you make inform those performance and that performance in the league table. So obviously the National Student Survey, and you can see there that variation between them. And importantly, the Guardian league table, which is much more focused on teaching and learning, has over 25% of the weighting of that on student satisfaction and performance in the NSS. And then as you work down, you can see we've got student outcomes and how those are compared between those league tables. Finance spend, so services spend, academic spend, facility spend are weighted in different ways. Research performance, so you can see in the Times league table, research quality is rated at 17%. In the Complete University Guide, it's 16.5%. In the Guardian, it's not considered. You've got entry tariffs, roughly equal weightings, and then staff-student ratios, the ratio of staff to students, which I think following the pandemic and the changes in teaching and learning will probably change in the future and how we use those. The Guardian is different in adding a value-added score, and this value-added means how you move your students from entry to what they achieve, and value-added. Coventry's always been a widening participation university. We take students from the top 10 from every indices of social deprivation in the UK. 55% of our students are from Black and minority ethnic backgrounds. And so it's really important for us on value added in terms of the attainment that our students, the achievements of our students. So this is from one of our data dashboards, and we monitor and compare ourselves against other universities. The blue line is Coventry, and I've selected another institution in the UK here, which is Liverpool John Moores. And the way we work is, you can see the scores from the league tables. That these are the raw scores from league tables, and we track our performance. This is a tracking a date with dates over time, with years, and our performance over time, and we track against other institutions to show how we perform in those league tables relative to the sector. So those are 3 UK, probably the most important league tables in the UK. We then move to the global rankings, which you're probably more familiar with, and there's 3 prominent global rankings: the Times Higher Education World University Rankings, which really focuses on research-intensive universities, the top 1,000 here, judged across all their core missions: teaching, research, knowledge transfer, and international outlook. Now, we say teaching, I'll just share the methodology in a moment, but very much more of a focus on research performance. The other major world rankings, obviously the QS World Rankings, using 6 metrics: academic reputation, and it's an important feature of both rankings is reputation, and reputation surveys inform both these rankings significantly. Employer reputation, faculty-student ratio, citations for faculty, international faculty ratio, and international student ratio. And it shows you how those metrics inform that QS World Rankings. And then there's a more recent entrant here, which is a QS Stars Ratings, which is judged on performance in 8 criteria amongst the following criteria. So research, teaching, employability, internationalization, facilities, online distance learning, innovation, culture, access, engagement, and some specialist criteria. These are quite important actually for many institutions, because they allow a rating in an area that a university feels they've got strengths in. So we submit for the QS 5 stars in areas of teaching, employability, internationalization, innovation, and online learning, where we're, I think, the only UK university to be ranked 5 stars in that. So these are important to us and are important internationally to us as well. I just wanted to share, so you just see what these terms mean. So when you look at the THE World Rankings methodology, obviously teaching is there and it's rated at 30%, but actually it's not teaching quality as you'd recognize it from the UK league tables. It's very much on a reputation survey. It's on staff-student ratios. It's on doctorate to bachelor's ratios in the university, doctorates awarded to academic staff, and institutional income. There's actually no measure there of teaching quality within that league table. And so, whereas in the UK league tables, we've very much got to focus on teaching quality. In the Times Higher Education World Rankings methodology, teaching quality doesn't really, it's more about reputation. Then you've got research at 30%, citations at 30%, and then international outlook, which proportion of international students, proportion of international staff, and international collaboration. Coventry, we actually have over a third of our students in Coventry are international students, so international recruitment is really important to us. So that's a brief introduction, and of course, this is just some screen grabs from universities in the UK and their front pages, and what you'll find on those universities' front pages. So you'll see how, I call them, it's kind of the boast data that universities use. And we all use them in the UK on our front pages as a way of selling the university. So you've got here Warwick, 8th in the UK, as measured in a particular metric in The Guardian, 62nd in the world in the QS World Rankings, and top 10 for the top 10 highest earnings for students 5 years after graduating. You've got there Nottingham Trent, TEF Gold features, and more focused on teaching and learning. Winner of the University of the Year in 2017 for the Times Higher, University of the Year for the Guardian last year, 2019. You've got UCL, much more research focused. So they're first in the UK for research strength, the recent Research Excellence Framework. 10th in the world QS World Rankings. So these are all used, and then at the top I put Sunderland. They've got a TES Silver, 5-star rating for QS in teaching. So universities use these rankings to sell to reputation, and it's important. Coventry, you know, if I look at our citation from the Good University guy gave us in 2021, Coventry is interesting because we are different in the sector, and we're often described as a dynamic, innovative, modern university. Shortlisted for University of the Year, named Modern University of the Year 3 times between 2014 and 16, and University of the Year for the Student Experience in 2018. So we have a reputation as a dynamic, innovative, modern university. And, you know, these are our, I'm not going to go through these are just a selection of some of the achievements that we put down that we're really proud of, you know. QS World Rankings, top 30 in the world for international students. We're rated first in the world for open online, open courses from MOOCs, University of the Year for Student Experience 2019. So these are our achievements and we're really proud of these. That's not always been the case at Coventry, and we've been on a journey really in the rankings and in the ratings. And I want to share a little bit of that journey with you and some of the strategies we've used in that journey. So that's where we are. We're really proud of that. But if I look at, you know, our journey, and this goes back to 2006 and tracks through to 2020, and it shows the rankings of 2 league tables, the Times and the Guardian. The Times league table rates research much more highly than the Guardian. The Guardian league table, if you remember, rates teaching and learning more highly. And you can see back between 2006 and 2011, we were bumping along in ratings, you know, between 70 and 80 in the league tables. So kind of low to middle ranking as a university, very regional in our strategy and outlook. Really, the point came in 2011 when we had a blip, or we saw a reduction in student satisfaction, which really impacted on our league table position, and we saw that reduction. What that triggered really was a real focus in the institution on strategic interventions, focusing on the student experience, focusing on our strategy to enhance teaching and learning, and a corporate strategy which looked at globalizing the university, but also real focus on how we drive teaching and learning quality across the institution, real embedded strategy. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the key interventions we made were really focusing on that student experience in a teaching and learning strength. We also had other strategic priorities as well, but in the teaching and learning area, we focused on the student experience. So looking at the courses we offered and having a real focused course portfolio. And we reduced down actually from around, I don't know, 450 courses at an undergraduate level. Without losing any subjects, we focused them down to a core of around 140 courses that we could focus on. And that was getting rid of a lot of courses which were and courses, so, you know, biology and journalism. We focused down to a core of 140 courses. We developed a university collective vision for our courses and what they offered. We made sure we made promises, so the student experience that our students joined us with and had were aligned to the strategy, and we met those promises. And one of the key things we did was around identifying, developing, and engaging with our academic course teams, defining our course teams, working with them, and developing those course teams. And a lot of focus on developing the core practices of our academic leaders, and those core practices that inform leadership right down to the course level, so middle management, but also right down at the course level, so that leadership development. And one of the key things that has informed our strategy since 2011 is the intelligent use of data to inform decision making, and aligning what we do to the external metrics and the external data that's collected on us. This is one of the first data dashboards we introduced at Coventry. This is, it's got a long name, it's the Course Quality Enhancement Monitoring Dashboard. And this really was giving academics access to the data on their courses, and then putting processes around this so our academics reviewed this data and action plans. And we've been using this data in various forms since 2012 when we introduced it, and introduced processes and quality processes around this. And it's a really detailed dashboard. You're just seeing the front page here, but it covers things like overall satisfaction, teaching on the course, assessment of feedback, entry tariffs, completion rates, the proportion of first and 2-1s, so good honours outcomes, positive destinations for our students, pass rates, and then we ranked courses on a course score. It was really important. This data was made open. Course teams could see how they ranked in this, and it really drove those enhancements, you know, and those conversations between the executive team, the senior management team, and the faculties in managing course portfolios. And those difficult conversations where you've got courses rated as red and saying, okay, how are we going to move those from red to green in enhancements? And those are really important. We use this data continuously, but at 2 points twice a year in the academic year to action plan right down at the course level for what our course teams do to enhance performance. We also, I talked about the core practices for our academic leaders, but we introduced, quite unusually for a university, some key core practices. So things like management-led teaching observation, coaching and mentoring, so that our academic leaders could observe teaching, and that was a mandatory process. The intelligent use of management information, and by that I mean that we don't just have the data, but what's really important is the actions that come from that data. We developed and used our student feedback system, so we knew what the students were thinking and the student experience was throughout the academic year. We put a lot of emphasis on continuing academic professional development, and academic leadership development was key in how we drove that. Above all, one of the really important things I think we do now, as we've become much more sophisticated over the years, is that we now have data dashboards that are used at every institutional level. So from the board and governance level through to the course team level. And we have an education health dashboard now that allows you to slice data and show data on performance of teaching and course performance. That there's a view to governors, and then as you work down the levels, there's a view that's appropriate for the different levels. So at a board level, you're seeing university group health in terms of the performance of the teaching portfolio. And then at the executive team level, we have the pillar lead for education. We'll be able to see the performance across the group structure, the Coventry University group structure. And then faculty performance and faculty action plans. At the school level, it's about course portfolio, the portfolio of courses and the school action plan. And then down at the course team level, it's really ownership of the data by the course team to drive improvements. So I suppose the message with this is the development of business intelligence, knowing your numbers. This is just a snapshot of one of the screens. We've got many dashboards as well that the one I've just shown you, Sequem, the National Student Survey that we use, student numbers dashboard to drive our recruitment, and a corporate plan dashboard that covers the different areas of the corporate plan. These are linked together using the same data. It gives a version of the truth across the institution to enable to work from one set of understanding of what the data is, and that's really important. So that's the Coventry University journey, and a very condensed version of the journey we've been on for a number of years, and how it's informed what we've done in the league tables, and informed and how it aligns to our strategy. Obviously, we've grown as an institution now. We're up to nearly 39,000 students, and we have, you know, a big global presence now with our subsidiaries and our academic partners. I'm going to move on now to
Andrew,
yeah.
I'm interrupting here slightly. I wonder, considering we're going to a completely different subject, whether it might be worth a pause to take any questions.
Absolutely.
In this section, would that work for you?
Yeah, that works for me, Alison.
Jamilia, what do you think, Jamilia?
Yeah, I think it's a very good idea. Yeah, and I can see several questions here. Maybe I will just read them out. And one of them is around staff-student ratio and how it is established.
So with staff-student ratio, there's what we call a statutory return to the Higher Education Statistics Agency, HESA, as it's known in the UK. And that has a methodology, and it's about the number of staff who have responsibilities for teaching and learning. So it's quite a complex methodology. It's used quite significantly in our league tables. So I think our headline figure is something like 14.6 to 1 in terms of our staff-student ratio, and it's calculated by the number of staff who have responsibilities in teaching and learning, a proportion of their time in teaching and learning. There's also another metric that has always been thought was going to be introduced, and that's the proportion of those staff who have an academic teaching qualification, which has been mooted over the years as one of the metrics that may be introduced and has never quite made it into those league tables, but it's again data that's collected by HESA.
Could I just add to that question? Andrew obviously is quite right in terms of the HESA methodology. In terms of strategy for institutions, though, I know of vice-chancellors who have inherited a very high staff-student ratio, 22 to 1 or something like that. And part of their strategy, of course, has been to reduce that so that the students get more individual attention. That's a very simplified explanation, Andrew, and I hope I haven't completely misled people. But I remember when I was at my university, we had very high staff-student ratios, and we worked very hard. And it's about investment, it's about a whole range of things. I don't know if you want to sort of illuminate that a little further, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that really matters. It matters from a student perspective, because in the end, the student experience and our ability to give good feedback to students, their ability to advise our students really matters in terms of staff-student ratios, academic staff. The ability to mark and turn around assessments quickly. One of the things that we if we have a 2-week turnaround time for submission of coursework to feedback, you have to have a good staff-student ratio to be able to improve the student quality.
Yeah, and it is part of the strategic decision making and the investment of the university. So we are not bound by a formula that we have to comply with. There's a way of calculating it, but it's for individual institutions to decide that for themselves in relation to their own particular aspirations for student experience and what needs putting right, basically.
Absolutely. And I think actually that there'll be some movement in what we mean by staff-student ratio as universities have responded to the pandemic, and there's been really new models of teaching and learning. I think there'll be some changes in how we consider these and what counts as contact, what counts as how we look at these ratios in the future. I think there's some change coming to the sector.
Thank you very much, Andrew and Alison. There are two questions related to kind of student satisfaction or feedback. And one of them is, what are the key KPIs for student satisfaction? And the other one, how do you make sure that feedback that you're getting from students is not artificial? How do you make this judgment about students' feedback and the quality and relevance?
That's a really important question about the feedback. And obviously every survey, including the NSS, the National Student Survey in the UK, is just a proxy for student satisfaction. It's a representation of student satisfaction. One of the things that we did was, I remember back before we had our strategic interventions, the levels of student feedback, the participation rates were very, very low. And we increased the questionnaire such that we got up to a level around 75%, and we started an 85% of students returning our questionnaires. What was really important was we did that halfway through modules, so we could look at feedback during the modules. But the important thing was anonymity. The ability of students to tell you how they were feeling. But also what's really important is closing the loop. So it's not sufficient to collect the data. What's really important is that you close the loop on the data and that the students know what action you've taken on that data. So having campaigns such as, we call them, you said, we did. It's about tying the loop and making sure that the students understand. So things that we insist on is at a module level, module leaders feeding back to students on the questionnaire, on the feedback, to say to them, okay, we've heard you, this is the actions we're taking in response to that feedback. And that's really important. We've just moved to confidential surveys now so that we can better look at how different demographics of students are responding and how satisfaction, still anonymous, but it gives an indication of the different demographic groups of students and how they're responding to it. So that's really important for us. Can
I just add as well, that, we start with the basic assumption that the students will tell the truth as well. So and I just think that's a simple point to make, but very important.
It is.
Yeah, thank you very much. There are two more questions before we move to another theme and topic of our discussion. And one of them is, do you have any frameworks or guidelines for observation, coaching and mentoring that you mentioned? And can you share those? And the other one is, are there any guidelines for collating and for using the data at institutional levels that you mentioned before?
So it's a very good question. Yes, one of the things that we did was to formalise with teaching observation and train the managers in teaching observation. That was really important for us, firstly to get buy-in, but also that nobody can do an observation without that training. So it was about management-led teaching observation. We moved very much away from, we still have peer observation, but a management-led teaching observation system was important. And we used that embedded that into a number of other strategies as well. So in order to get professional recognition in teaching and learning, our staff at every level have to pass a teaching observation. We have approximately 84% of our staff have an academic teaching qualification. To get that teaching qualification, they have to pass a management-led teaching observation to achieve that level, to achieve that qualification. So it's about alignment, really. And what matters is, I suppose rather than sharing, it's more about having the key aspects of observation that align to strategy. We're very much about an active approach to teaching and learning, and that features in our observation strategy. So yes, we now have observation, obviously, of online teaching as well as just the face-to-face teaching as well in terms of the response to the pandemic.
Thanks.
I think also, Jamila, perhaps I could ask, I'm sure we will have guidelines, sort of generic frameworks, particularly around observation and you know, development of pedagogy on Advanced HE website, so we could look at that outside of this meeting.
Great, great. And on use of data?
Use of data. Yes, use of data.
Collating and use of data, yeah.
I remember launching the use of data. And it wasn't on a sophisticated business intelligence dashboard visualized through Tableau. It was on, when we started in 2012, on an Excel spreadsheet printed out. And I remember talking to our nurses when we launched this, and we got the team in a room for the day, and they were presented with 80 pages of data. And I remember the complaint to the Vice Chancellor at the time of how are we supposed to do this? We've progressed, and one of the things is about scaffolding the use of data and training academics in understanding and interpreting data, and scaffolding processes so that you support staff in how they work through data. So key institutional metrics aligned to the data that they see, but then helping the staff understand how they perform against that data, and then structuring action plans against that data. So that's been a lot of work in progress, but we spend a lot of time, and we do that at different levels. So we do it at the course team, course director level. We also do it at the middle management level, of how they can look at the portfolio of their courses and understand how their portfolio is performing. So we scaffold that. We have an academic development team that do that training alongside our business intelligence team that do that training and scaffold that training. So there's no good having data if people don't know how to use it, and the use of the data go hand in hand.
Thank you. Yeah, and also to focus on the things that really matter, and measure the things that really matter. And yeah, and as you say, so important that we can use this data effectively.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. And maybe now we can move on to credit transfer.
Okay, I will share my screen again. Let me just pause. And I'm hoping that's where we left off.
Yes.
Excellent. The wonders of technology. So moving on to academic credit transfer, and I don't want this can be a really complicated subject. So I don't want to go into too much detail on the mechanisms, but just show you some areas of where we're focusing, and consider the future for credit transfer as well. I think one of the important aspects of credit systems is it allows that common working internationally. It allows a transparency of course the courses and the design and credit, and that enables collaborative working internationally. As I said in the introduction, we have a large provision internationally. We firstly recruit a lot of international students into Coventry. We also work collaboratively and have partners in many parts of the world who are delivering Coventry University programs, degrees, both undergraduate and postgraduate. And underpinning that is an understanding of credit systems and understanding course structures to enable us to map qualifications and to ensure that a Coventry University degree delivered in Ghana is of the same standard as of the same degree delivered back in Coventry. And that's really important. So having that understanding of credit systems, having understanding of that common understanding of levels, it is really important to be able to promote those collaborations, those partnerships, those deep partnerships that we have with our collaborative partners. So that's just as a starting point, that you can't underemphasize the importance of understanding academic credit transfer systems and those international comparisons between the different systems. And in the introduction, it was mentioned about the alignment of the Uzbek system with the European credit transfer system. And that's really important, so that there is that comparability and the ability for institutions to form those collaborative partnerships with international universities. And I think we gain such a lot from partnerships. You know, often people view partnerships as one way. I think really important is partnership. And for us, when with partnerships, it's a two-way learning process. I think since I've been involved in international partnerships since about 2009, I've worked a lot in the Middle East, in Oman. The learning I get from partnerships and bringing it back in international understanding is just as important as the importance of our partners learning and developing it alongside the Coventry. So that just by way of introduction, really. So in the UK, academic credit transfer systems and study for credit and credit ratings has now become the norm in the UK over the last 20 years. It's become normal practice now. Not every institution is modularized, but the majority of institutions in the UK are modularized in how we deliver our degrees. And that has resulted in flexible modes of study. I remember Coventry has a modular scheme. We went for a very modular focus in the 1990s and early 2000s, when we were very modularized, very, very flexible in our learning and how we construct courses and putting modules together to enable that flexible course design. We somewhat moved a little bit away from that and focusing on course and the course focus or program focus now. But academic credit transfer has really transformed what we would see as the traditional non-modular course structures into credit-rated modular course structures that you see in the UK now. And that's really important. It allows students to transfer between institutions. It allows that working globally. And it allows that transfer of students between institutions, whether it's in the UK or whether it's within Europe or whether it's further afield for us. The first higher education credit framework for England was originally published in 2008, and it's recently been revised in December 2020 to reflect the changes that have happened in UK higher education. And if you haven't, I've put the link to it at the bottom of this slide, but we'll circulate, you know, you've got the recording, we'll circulate these. If you haven't seen the publication from December, I would certainly recommend a read. It was the committee that wrote this was chaired by Professor Sue Rigby, who's Vice Chancellor of Bath University. And it's a really accessible read and an interesting read, because it really does modernise and look at how credit transfer systems can apply to the future of higher education and how higher education is changing and becoming much more flexible, that demand for flexible higher education. I would say it's in England, unlike Wales and Scotland, it aligns with we have a separate document, which is a framework for higher education qualifications, which are the outcome descriptors for our degrees in England. And it defines the outcomes for different levels of degrees, so undergraduate degrees, postgraduate degrees, and doctoral qualifications. In Scotland and Wales, these are in one document rather than two separate documents. So what I'm going to say is that academic credit transfer systems really, and that framework has been the base code, if you like, for the design of higher educations in the UK. And so qualifications that are at level 4 and above on the UK qualifications framework. We have a standardization of the effort for learning. So 1 credit in the UK is equivalent to around 10 hours of notional learning. So that's the standardization that we work to. So I put the link there if you to look at that. And if you look at this document, you'll see this really helpful graphical representation of the credit framework for England. And what you can see here is that alignment that we have, firstly with the ECTS, the European Credit Transfers System, and which is the credit ratings are half the UK credit rating. So 1 UK credit is equivalent to half an ECTS credit. So what you can see here in this file is the relationship with that, and the levels in grey represent the levels of a degree of the different levels of study in the UK. So levels 4, 5 and 6 are degree level study in the UK. So level 4 would equate to first year study at a university. Level 6 is the graduate outcome at a university for a degree, for a bachelor's degree. Level 7 is taught postgraduate, PGCE, teacher qualifications, postgraduate diplomas are at level 7, and then level 8 refers to doctoral study. In some jurisdictions not credit rated, but we increasingly have taught doctorates, professional doctorates that have a credit rating framework within the UK. You can also see there that linkage to vocational technical qualifications, which are a focus of the government at the moment in higher technical qualifications to widen participation in and access to higher education in the UK. Increasingly on the agenda, although I'm not going to go into any detail, are micro-credentials. The micro-credentials are increasingly an interesting area where small chunks of learning, bite-sized chunks of learning are increasingly being offered, which attract credit rating. And credit rating frameworks allow universities to give that and to credit and that learning and give credit rating to that learning. So that's the credit framework for England, but importantly, it is aligned to the ECTS. And of course, we can use the NARIC database to look at how qualifications can compare across the world. So as Alison said, when we went down this modularization, these credit systems in the UK, it was always kind of assumed that we start to see lots of movement. And I just want to put the context at Coventry. So as I said before, this is just data I pulled off, asked our business intelligence unit just to pull off for me yesterday, of the numbers of students enrolling with an accreditation of prior learning at Coventry per year. We have 39,000 students. Obviously, we're in the current year of 2020, 2021, and we have a May intake. So we're just starting a new semester with recruiting students at the moment. So we've not finished a year yet. So that data is somewhat in development. But you can see as a proportion of our students coming into the university with advanced standing or with credit, it's not a huge proportion. We're looking at, you know, less than 10% of our students entering with credit. The majority of those for undergraduate are through articulation agreements with international partners, and I'll talk through one of those in a moment. What we don't see is a great deal of movement within higher education in the UK of our body of undergraduate learners, 18-year-olds coming into higher education. We don't see lots of credit transfer happening there, but we do get about 10%. You can see we've had a higher increase in 2019, and we had an increase in the number of students joining us with credit coming from other institutions in that year. So that's, you know, the size of what we see. But I think there will be growth in credit transfer as there are new modes of learning and flexible modes of learning that open up in the coming years. I think there will be an increasing importance of credit transfer systems. So just some examples of how we use credit transfer. I mentioned Coventrys in the Midlands, our headquarters in the Midlands, our main campus is in the Midlands, and we have a group of universities in the Midlands called the Midlands Enterprise Universities. And within this, we have what we call the Midlands Enterprise Universities Credit Compass. And this is an agreement between the universities of Birmingham City University, Coventry, Derby, Lincoln, Nottingham, Trent, and Wolverhampton, in an agreement to facilitate student credit transfer between those universities and to facilitate that movement of students and to support them in that transfer. What we don't see are great numbers of students doing that. I think it's very few students. In fact, I tried to get the data but couldn't. Very few students are using that mechanism because there's just not the need for it at the moment. We don't see that need with students. I put the link on there so you can see how it works and the information to students. As I said, one of the key things, as one aspect of our international delivery is articulation agreements with overseas partner. And this is an agreement we have with TARC University College in Malaysia, a long-standing agreement where we have an articulation agreement. And this facilitates quite a large number of learners, mobility between the two institutions. It's a partnership agreement where all learners are enrolled on a designated course as a partner. In this case, we have 9 undergraduate awards at this partner and then are admitted with advanced standing to Coventry University. Often these are called top-up courses, but this allows this articulation, and we recognise the first 2 years at TARC in Malaysia, and then the students join Coventry or start a Coventry University course with advanced standing. The students in this case graduate with 2 awards. They graduate with an award from Malaysia and they graduate with an award from Coventry. It's a robust process. So this isn't a process that is light. It's a robust process. It really means a detailed curriculum mapping to ensure that the learners who transfer have covered the required subject content and that the volume of credit of the studies already completed at the partner is sufficient to grant the exemption from the modules at Coventry. So it's a robust process. It goes from approval process, but it means that the students have that mobility and the outcomes and credits are mapped both ways. So both institutions, and it's mapped both ways to enable that dual award. It means you have a robust approval process. It also means that you have a really robust due diligence process as well, because you have to have those processes in case students drop out, all sorts of scenarios you have to plan for. The typical arrangement in this arrangement is that 2 years in TARC and then entry into the Coventry University final year. 50% of this final year is delivered in Malaysia, and then 50% is delivered at Coventry, so that we see the students coming for a semester at Coventry. We use it. There are other programs with our engineering faculty, but we've got 9 undergraduate awards in the business faculty. It's fresh in my mind because I chaired the approval event a few weeks ago. So this is what this enables. Our other, we also have other partnerships around the world where it's not an articulation agreement, where it's a validation arrangement, where the vast majority of our partnership work is a validation of a partner to deliver the Coventry University degree, as I mentioned before. And that, again, requires an appreciation and understanding of credit transfer and the volume of credit and the levels of credit. So that's really important. We also have, and many UK institutions have, a framework for student mobility through credit transfer. And what this really means is the ability of our students on a Coventry University degree to go and study a minimum of a 60 credit semester at a partner institution. So they are reciprocal arrangements with trusted international partners that meet the criteria for a strategic partnership. Reciprocal is important because it means the fees do not need to be paid between the two organisations. What it means is that the modules at the partner institution, so if it was a partner in, say, Uzbekistan, are mapped to the Coventry course learning outcomes, so that the credit in that semester abroad is then used, and the grades at that partner abroad are used in the calculation of the award at Coventry and the award at Coventry. So you can see again the real importance of alignment with international systems in facilitating these sorts of arrangements internationally between universities in different jurisdictions. So that's really important, that standardization, that internationalization of credit and recognition of credit is really important. So the credit at the partner institution generally is recognized, and it replaces the Coventry credit. It's converted to Coventry grades, and often you have a chart to do that conversion, and it uses a NARIC international grade comparison database to facilitate those arrangements. And it's, again, subject to a robust approval process. It's not something that is just ad hoc. It's something that goes through a robust approval process and due diligence. And again, another example of how we use these credit frameworks are, and I think this is looking to the future now, we now have open undergraduate and open masters frameworks at Coventry, which we've recently introduced. And these are a BSc or a BA by professional development, and an MA or MSc by professional development. And an open course framework is really creating a qualification shell to enable the flexible programs of study and accreditation of prior learning. And in our frameworks at Coventry, up to 240 credits at undergraduate and 120 credits at postgraduate can be then accredited. Where we see this being really important is not individual learners coming in and building their own degrees, but where we see this as really important is starting to work with employers to commission bespoke modules and to commission courses from the university module portfolio that match an employer needs and matches the needs of their workforce. And we see the majority of this sort of demand coming from those employer relationships and enterprise relationships that can form. So the credit transfer, again, is really important in accrediting prior experience, but also in able to accumulate and build credit and to enable individuals to exit with an award. So it allows diverse programs to be built that meets the needs of employees and employers in how we build credit. So where do I see the future of credit transfer in the UK? We've got at the moment a UK government focus on post-18 education in the UK to encourage flexible and lifelong learning. And we know with the changes in learning that lifelong learning is going to become more and more important with increases in learning technology, but also just changes in society. We know that people aren't in jobs for very long now, and they change careers regularly. So I think lifelong learning, well, I know lifelong learning is going to become much more important. The government in the UK is focused on alternatives to the full-time degree for students at 18. There's a real interest, and there was a letter from the Minister this morning to providers in the UK outlining some of these plans, but a real interest in flexible learning of different volumes of learning to learners and employer needs. Much more interest in transferability of qualifications. And the UK government's got a commitment to lifelong learning entitlement for individuals so access to a pot of money for lifelong learning. There's an increasing interest in micro-credentials, in the interest in credit-bearing bite-sized chunks of learning. Massive online open courses are an example of where we're starting to see credit and universities recognizing credit for smaller chunks, smaller bits of learning. So less than 10 credits of learning recognized. And it allows that stacking of qualifications. It allows individuals to be engaged in lifelong learning. And then I think these open framework qualifications are going to be increasingly important to match employer needs and to align to employer needs. And so just leaving you a final thing, this very early starts for us as a university, but as part of our, these are 3 of our MOOCs which attract academic credit. And these are aligned with particular businesses, so cloud computing with Amazon Web Services. This is customer sales management with Salesforce training, and Tableau, which is data visualization. You can see they attract, I think they're 12 weeks, they're micro, and some of these attract credit. So these are offered on a FutureLearn platform. And we also offer our online courses through FutureLearn, which attract, which are delivered in a MOOC-like way. So that's all I'm going to say, and thank you for listening. I hope that's been helpful and set out some examples of how these processes, both the league tables but also credit recognition systems, are used at Coventry, and some exemplars for you. I hope my Manchester accent hasn't been too tricky to understand, and open it up for questions and discussion.
Thank you very much, Andrew. It was really useful, and it's good. It's always good to get some real examples and real case studies of how things have worked and the things that you have learned. We have got 3 questions so far, and one of them is for you, Andrew, and it goes: when you choose partner universities, overseas, what kind of indicators you ask for? So that's the first question, and the other 2 are around credit transfer system. And the first one is: how can credit transfer system help establishment of transnational education? And the other one is: how can credit transfer system impact university performance nationally? Alison mentioned this in the beginning, but it will be useful to get maybe a fuller answer to that as well.
Okay, so let's start with the first question about partnership development, and it's really important. At the outset, what I will say is working internationally with collaborative partners is still governed by the Office for Students and the Quality Assurance Agency in the UK. So that an award made at a partner is equivalent, and is equivalent as robust as an award made by Coventry back in the UK. So when you're looking at risk at an institutional level, it is probably it's one of the riskiest bits of your business. So what's really important is the robustness of the partner, and the quality of the partner's really important. So there's a whole set of processes in terms of due diligence. What's important very often is alignment of values and principles. So values in terms of the values that underpin the institution and the approaches taken to teaching and learning, and an alignment really, it doesn't have to be equal, but an alignment really between quality systems as well when you start to establish that partnership. What's really important is, in establishing these arrangements between institutions, they are seen as a partner, and it's not seen as just a one-way of just a transactional relationship. It has to be a partnership relationship. So there's mutual understanding and mutual learning between learners. So there has to be a fit between the organisations to establish that and to make them successful. And we will invest in long-term partners by supporting academic development, the development of teaching and learning, but also the development of quality processes. So there's alignment there between the two organisations, and there's that partnership arrangement. So that's really important. Those processes are really robust. The credit transfer is important, as I've said. Credit transfer is important in some relationships, particularly where you have an articulation relationship, where you're recognising the credit that's been delivered at a partner organisation. And we have a number of partners where we recognise the first 2 years of a degree, and then they would join what we call the top-up year of a Coventry University degree. Generally, the top-up year is delivered in country by the organisation, by the partner, rather than delivered at Coventry. But they can be in Coventry, as I've shown in the TARC example. So in that way, credit transfer is really important, and having confidence in what's being delivered previous to the Coventry top-up is really important in that. So you can't underestimate that alignment with international standards. The alignment with international standards and the alignment with common international frameworks is important to facilitate those arrangements. Having said that, there isn't always need to be exact alignment. So if I look at the relationship we have with some, there are different credit rating systems, there are different pass marks, and you make it work by doing mappings and working out how, at a very practical level, you can facilitate the transfer of credit between them. So there doesn't have to be an exact match, but you can use frameworks for doing that. Credit transfer nationally is, if you look at those league tables, there are a number of indicators. One is the number of international awards students coming to your university governs how you perform, and reputation, and the diversity of learners and the number of international students coming into university is important. So these frameworks do that. I don't think they particularly impact on your profile nationally, or the ratings nationally. I'll ask Alison just to comment, but I don't think they impact in that way. What they do is standardise degrees, they standardise, and we have a system in the UK where the quality of a degree awarded at Coventry is the same as the quality of a degree awarded at another university. I won't name the university, but it's the same. We have a common set of standards, and that's really important for recognising and being able to deal with other institutions. Alison, I don't know if you've got anything to add.
No, I don't think so. I think that's that common set of standards, which we have spent years and years working at and defining, is really important. And I'm working with other countries, other quality assurance agencies in other countries. They are working very hard to establish this as well, because I think what you are seeing here in Uzbekistan is the opportunities and the benefits of this international collaboration. And so I think being able to demonstrate how your standards align with what institutions in the UK would be looking for is the absolute key and primary thing. I think that's what I'd say. Yeah. Yes, and Oxford even. There are different approaches, and there will certainly be a different staff-student ratio in Oxford to other institutions because they have a very different teaching model. But yes, the quality of the degree in terms of our quality standards have to all reach the same level.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah.
Sorry, that's a really important point, Alison. It's about standards. It doesn't mean to say it's the same. So
no, and I think actually there's a language issue around standards, isn't there, Andrew, as well? Yeah. Even within our own quality assurance code. Yeah. And you're probably closer to the definitions of. Would you care? Because I'm sure I would mess it up, to define what standard means for us.
So standard, it's about thresholds, really. So if you look at the framework for higher education qualifications, that framework has a number of outcomes that define the level that a student reaches on exit from a particular award. So you'll see a definition for outcomes at level 6 and award. I would have to say there's a focus on standards in the UK, which is really interesting. If you look in the UK, there's been an increase year on year on the proportion of students gaining the highest classification of a degree, the first class honours, and there's been an increase in the proportion of students who achieve a 2-1, and that's brought scrutiny of the sector and by the Office for Students. As a sector, we would argue that actually there's been a great focus on teaching and learning, on the quality of teaching and learning. Advance HE and its predecessor, the Higher Education Academy, did a lot of the professionalisation and the promotion of the professionalisation of teaching in the UK. And as a result, I would say the quality of teaching we see today in universities is way and above the quality of when I entered higher education. There's a professionalisation there. And I think what we're seeing is an increase in student attainment because we've really invested in teaching and learning. But nevertheless, that has brought a scrutiny. So what we're seeing now are descriptors coming out for the classification in the UK. So what the descriptor is for a first class honours, what the descriptor is for an upper second class, the descriptor for a second class honours. And that's now been embedded in grade criteria. It's also being used in the, and Alison's organisation is key in the training of our external examiners and how our external examiners set levels. So there is scrutiny. We have to write an outcome statement that's published on our website that justifies and explains any increases in the proportions. So yeah, there is, the standards, we have this common set of standards, but it doesn't mean to say all degrees are the same in the UK, and different universities. Oxford has a very different mission and a very different style of education to Coventry, as does Cambridge. And they're very different, and students choose a provider according to the subject and what they want out of a university experience.
Thank you, Andrew. Alison, would you like to add?
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yes, there are two kind of final questions from the chat, and one is for Andrew, I suppose. Do you have your courses on Coursera? And the other one is, what programs in partnership with other universities are most relevant to your university? People are now exploring potential T&E partnerships with overseas universities. Probably that's the rationale behind this question.
Yeah, so we're not on Coursera. When we developed our online strategy 3 years ago, we went through a number of strategic considerations of who to go with, and we chose in the end to partner with FutureLearn, which is a UK-based MOOC platform. It's the only UK-based one, and we went into partnership. We were and that was for a number of reasons. It was about alignment. It was about ownership of our content, and it was also about we were the first, we were the second global university to offer degrees on the FutureLearn platform, and the first UK university to offer degrees on the FutureLearn platform. And we did it in this MOOC-like way. And so that for us, it was about, so with all our online degrees, we offer the first 2 weeks of each course as free and open to enable students to go in. And through that, we've got something like 166,000 students just this year enrolled on those open free modules. It allows a taster, and that was very much part of that strategy. So we're not on Coursera, we're with FutureLearn. And what kind of programs? Well, I suppose we're a university with the whole range of degrees we offer, and there has to be, when we partner And it's the same for every other university in the UK. There has to be alignment between a university, as I said before, in terms of quality approaches, but in terms of the values of universities, and strengths in subjects. You know, Coventry historically has got strengths in engineering. It's also got strengths in business and increasingly in health and nursing. So it just depends really, and that's the same for any UK university looking for partnerships and developing partnerships. It's a very competitive area.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We are coming to the end of our discussion today, and I would like to ask both of you, Andrew and Alison, what it is, just one core message about university rankings from you, and the same about credit transfer systems.
Gosh, that's a tough one. Well, I just think in terms of university rankings, I think they influence institutions disproportionately, but institutions have little choice now, because when you have a marketized higher education system, the key thing that the shoppers, the buyers want and need is information, and that's what they're providing. I think what is even more frightening though is certain countries are only deciding to, they are only funding students to attend, for example, universities are in the top 50 of a particular ranking system. I'm talking PhD students or something like this. So I don't think their influence is going to go away. I think it will only become more significant in future. And I think you can see the data systems that you need to underpin working within this context, the leadership and management, the training and support. It's a big ask of institutions, but I'm sure you're all up to it. Thank you.
I would echo Alison's comments on credit rating, sorry, on league tables. I think it does disproportionately affect institutions, and actually, you know, if you look at the rankings for the top universities and where they rank 1,000 universities, there's many more universities in the world than that who are quality institutions. Mm. And if we're going to satisfy the demand for higher education with the increases in world population, there's going to have to be new models, new ways of recognizing quality in what we deliver. You know, the traditional approaches of higher education will not be able to cope with the demand for higher education that we'll see as more and more countries develop and the demand for higher education grows. And you just have to see that in terms of population growth. So they do disproportionately affect institutions. I agree with Alison. It's frightening where you've got countries only going to fund students to go to the top so many institutions that meets particular criteria. But they you know, we have to align our strategies to achieve the best we can in those systems.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, everyone, for this really useful discussion. And I understand how important it is now to have this discussion and to learn from good international practice when such large-scale reforms are taking place at a national and institutional levels. So we will, of course, continue all these conversations, and we will continue listening to all our partners here in Uzbekistan to understand what's needed, what kind of discussions we need to start and facilitate. I'm very pleased to say that from now on, the British Council globally will launch a big program which is called Going Global Higher Education Partnerships, which aims to support collaboration and partnership between the UK and other countries, including, of course, Uzbekistan, in the area of higher education reform. And this new program will strengthen system innovation dialogues. It will provide opportunities for more comprehensive partnerships around quality assurance and graduate outcomes. And it will launch learning cohorts to bring together academics, higher education professionals to discuss the themes and topics which matter to them. So we will be telling you more about this new program, and we will be very, very happy to hear your views and your ideas, so we shape the program accordingly. As I said in the chat, we will be putting all the presentations of all our webinars, including today's, on our website, and Indira kindly shared the link to the website and to the page that is bringing together all the material from all our policy discussions. So thank you very much, everyone, for taking part in this discussion. And again, thanks to our key partners here in Uzbekistan, Ministry of Higher and Secondary Specialized Education, Higher Education Council, all universities here in Uzbekistan, Quality Assurance Agency, El-Yurtimide Foundation. Thank you very much. And of course, big thanks to Advance HE for being such a great partner to work with, and for your support and sharing experience and expertise in this area in such an important moment of time when big, large-scale reforms are taking place in Uzbekistan. And of course, thanks to our wonderful interpreters for making this discussion happen. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a nice evening.
Thank you, Jamila. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And apologies to interpreters who had to interpret my Mancunian accent.